Ahoy, landlubbers, it's me, your valiant Captain Vasco!
Just kidding. Now, today I wanted to talk about... I'm not sure this is going to work out. So like I was saying, today I wanted to talk about something a little bit lighter and fun, since the last couple of Captain's Cabins have been sort of, introspective and more serious. So none of that today. So instead, today we'll be talking about one of my favorite video game franchises of all time, Pokemon! Don't know what this is happening. Now, as I mentioned in a past video, I could basically talk about Pokemon forever. Like, literally forever. If nothing else happened for the rest of time, I could have conversations about Pokemon until the end of the universe, whenever that happens. So because of that, today we're going to talk about one element of Pokemon in particular. Or actually sort of several, but one subject. I'm going to be talking about my 5 top Pokemon pet peeves, or Poke-Pet Peeves, or for short. Number 5. Hacks. Anyone unfamiliar with the term, at least specifically in relation to Pokemon, hacks refers to moves that rely on excessive chance, or for situations that shouldn't rely on chance to rely on chance. So basically we're talking about stuff like sand attack and confusion effects and things of that nature. Okay, so look, I understand that it's a role-playing game at its core, so that there need to be some random elements so that the most powerful Pokemon don't just always steamroller over all 60 billion other existing Pokemon. However, well, I don't know about you, but when I play the game, it's not so much a random number generator as a random suffering generator that powers these chance occurrences. What's that? The enemy used Confuse Ray on your Pokemon? Well, it's definitely going to hit itself in confusion for 6 consecutive turns instead of landing that one last hit to do like 5 damage to knock out the enemy. What's that? The opponent's Pokemon successfully put mine to sleep? Well, it looks like my Pokemon's definitely going to be sleeping for the maximum number of turns, because anything less than that would be probable, and thus impossible for me. Seriously, a lot of the moves that are based solely on luck, like Sand Attack, which just increases your Pokemon's ability to miss randomly, even if their attacks normally have 100% accuracy, are banned in competitive play. That means I'm certainly not the only one having frustrations with these problems, but somehow, no matter how many generations of this game I play, no matter how many versions, no matter how much I train my Pokemon and prepare for every situation, I KO my own Pokemon from full health under Zubat's confusion. It just doesn't make any sense. Now again, it's not so much something that they can change about the game, because it's an element of the game that should exist. It's just really frustrating to me because I just somehow always encounter the worst case scenario, and I feel like a lot of you will probably share the same sentiment, even though I'm pretty sure it is technically a random number generator, and not that weird thing I said earlier. However, that still means it's one of my Poke-Pet Peeves. Pet peeve number 4. Legendary Pokemon. Okay, now hear me out. I know that a lot of people really like legendary Pokemon, but I feel like this is also sort of like a split camp thing. You sort of either love them or hate them. And oddly enough, I do sort of find myself in the middle on this issue, but I feel like they've lost sight of what made legendary Pokemon legendary in the first place. Anyone who's as old as I am probably played Pokemon Red and Blue growing up, because everyone played Pokemon Red and Blue, or they weren't cool and had their lunch money stolen from cooler kids. Not that I condone that sort of thing, but you should have been playing Pokemon. I'm sorry, it's just the best. So, out of the original generation of Pokemon, 150, there were, like 4 legendary Pokemon? 5 if you count all 151 and Mew? Basically, there weren't very many of them. And they were very special and powerful. I mean, when you first encountered them, they didn't act like any other Pokemon. You didn't know what was going on. And then when you did fight them, they were likely to kick the butt of several of your Pokemon because they were incredibly powerful, and you're just not prepared for that situation. Now that's a legendary occurrence. It doesn't function like other Pokemon. They're incredibly powerful, they're rare, you can only have one of them. And it was a really special thing. Like, it sort of harkens back to the days before the internet when, like, you didn't know anything about a game unless you could play it for yourself. Like, that kind of experience was just hard to explain to anyone who didn't run across those wild Pokemon for themselves. But nowadays, I've genuinely lost count of how many legendary Pokemon there are. There's like 6 to 10 per generation nowadays. It's just completely out of hand and ridiculous. One of the things that was so important about the legendary Pokemon and what made them so special was how rare they were. I mean, think about it. If every Pokemon was legendary, would any Pokemon be legendary? I mean, it's sort of a tired argument, but at the same time, it's not special if it's not different. That's what set them apart, was being different from all the other Pokemon, and that's what made them special. So the fact that there's so many nowadays, you're practically tripping over them just to complete the main storyline of any Pokemon game, it just doesn't have the same appeal that it used to. On top of that, the legendary Pokemon nowadays just aren't as interesting as they used to be. I mean, the character design's still good, don't get me wrong. The problem is simply that they're just like a pile of stats and like a interesting combination of Pokemon types. Like, they're not the same thing that they used to be. Like, Mew was awesome. You could learn any TM, so like it could do anything. Like, that's a legendary Pokemon. A Pokemon that can do things that no other Pokemon can do. A lot of legendaries recently have just been like big, stupid dragon Pokemon. You know what other Pokemon can do that? Any other dragon Pokemon that's big and stupid. I don't know. I'm probably a little bit biased because I like to do weird, quirky things with my Pokemon, and I like to create teams that have unusual movesets that people don't expect, but I don't know. I think that there's a genuine argument here against the way that they've treated legendary Pokemon recently, and I would like to see them somehow recapture that magic that they used to have. I don't know exactly how to do it, but my main point is that it's just not the same as it used to be, and I feel like they're trying too hard, you know? Like, maybe there should be a generation with just 1 or 2 legendary Pokemon, and they should be really exciting. Like, they could put a lot of effort into making those Pokemon particularly unique. I don't know, it's just a thought. If you're like someone who totally likes legendary Pokemon and you think I'm stupid, leave comments, whatever. I open myself to the criticism of the Pokemasses. Pet Peeve the Third, Esquire. Now, going off the legendary Pokemon discussion, there's something that's been bothering me increasingly as newer versions have been coming out, and that's exclusive Pokemon. Now, I'm not talking about version-exclusive Pokemon. That's been like a staple of the series forever, and I understand why they do that, and it makes a reason to have 2 versions of the game, which, you know, whether you like it or not, is an interesting mechanic, and they're well within their rights to do that. No, I'm talking about a different kind of exclusive Pokemon. So, you know how Japan is the country that made Pokemon, and how they have a Pokemon Center that's not just part of a Nintendo store in New York, and Pokemon's generally an even bigger deal there than it ever was here. Well, that's great for them and all, and they get to have special events like when they release Pokemon movies in theaters, people get special, like, Pokemon cards or downloadable Pokemon, and it's totally sweet, and I wish we could do that. But we can't. It's not like I feel like the people behind the Pokemon game are deliberately trying to spite the rest of the world for liking their game and not being Japanese. Not really sure why they would do that to begin with, but at times it does definitely feel like we just aren't as important as the Japanese consumers in the Pokemon world. Perhaps it's hypocritical for an American to be talking about not getting awesome things from other countries or whatever, but I don't know, it seems like every time there's an event for sweet Pokemon stuff, it's either exclusive to Japan or like way easier for Japanese people to get it, or I don't know, like whatever. But honestly, that's not even my biggest issue. I mean, going back to the legendary thing, a lot of legendary Pokemon in Black and White can only be obtained through like Wi-Fi events, which last for like a month or 2. So if you happen to miss out on those, you can just like literally never get that legendary Pokemon. I'm talking mostly about Meloetta, because I just barely missed out on getting a Meloetta because I wasn't paying attention, and I'm really sad about it, because Meloetta is a really cool Pokemon. Why, Meloetta? Why? What are you looking so happy about? I'm sad. You should be sad too. It's called empathy. I mean, if they want us to be having fun playing with these great Pokemon that they design, why can't we just have them? Why take them out of the game and make it so that we have to go out of our way to get the Pokemon instead of just playing the game and to be rewarded for playing the game by finding the really cool Pokemon? I don't know. It just seems to me like this model made a lot more sense back in Red and Blue when you would play the game and beat the game and then you'd get access to Mewtwo, who was pretty cool, even though he's totally not my favorite or anything. And going even one step further, because I feel like it's generally the same topic, there's Pokemon that, like, no longer get supported from older versions. So, for example, say that you're a really big fan of starting Pokemon from a particular generation. There's a lot of cases where you can't always get starting Pokemon from games other than the one that you're playing. And then there's Pokemon that are like Feebas, who you need to like maximize its Pokemon beauty for Pokemon contests, and Pokemon contests haven't been a thing for a while, but somehow you still need to focus on an archaic stat that doesn't contribute to anything else in the game in order to evolve it. What's the deal with that? I don't know. At some point I'll talk more about how the Pokemon series experiments, and maybe we'll touch deeper on that issue. But for now, I'm just going to say I think it's weird, and I don't know why they decided to do that. Pet peeve numero dos. So, hidden machines. Am I right? Yeah? What? No? What am I talking about? Okay, I'll explain. So, unlike a lot of other, perhaps similar RPGs, there's a certain subset of moves that are important to navigating the storyline of Pokemon. Talking about moves like Cut, Strength, Surf. Those have been pretty consistent throughout the series, and then there's the occasional odd one like Defog. And this is another issue that I don't think is like entirely one-sided, because I think it is actually a really clever idea to make there be sort of like explorative elements to the overworld so that it's not just like walking through a corridor waiting to get to your next Pokemon battle. You get to explore the world and look for hidden treasures and stuff like that. That stuff's all really cool. My problem with HM moves is sort of twofold. One, it sort of takes away from my ability to customize my Pokemon team because I need to have these moves in order to complete the game. However, most of the moves kind of suck, and I don't generally want them on the Pokemon that I'm using to battle other trainers and win gym badges and stuff along those lines. They're sort of a hindrance, and they generally don't add very much to your Pokemon's abilities. Surf being the notable exception because what the heck, why is that move so strong compared to all the other HM moves? And that sort of takes me on to the second point, which is, why can't more HM moves be like Surf? I mean, Surf isn't necessarily the one best water-type special move, but it's really good, and there's no reason that I wouldn't want to put it on a water Pokemon unless it was like physical attack based. If there was simply more variety to the HM moves, like if Strength was a reasonably powerful fighting type move that you could teach to a lot of Pokemon, that'd be way better than being some dinky normal move that's outclassed by a whole bunch of normal moves and moves that can be super effective against fighting other Pokemon. And for that matter, Cut could be a grass type move. Defog could never be in a game again because it's terrible, and why Defog? I think generally there just needs to be a greater variety to HM moves. For example, why is there Waterfall, Surf, and Dive all being important HM moves in various Pokemon games? Do we really need that many ways to explore the water? I feel like maybe 2 was enough. It's getting kind of ridiculous. More to the point, do you really want one of your Pokemon knowing only like water-type moves that you need to know to get around to the game? Or would you rather play with a water Pokemon that's cool and does a bunch of stuff you like? Seems like a pretty easy decision to me, except it's kind of a hard decision because, again, you need those moves to go around. Now, of course, there's what people sometimes refer to as HM slaves, Pokemon that can learn at least 3, usually 4 different types of HM moves. And that's great because you get to consolidate all the moves that you need to know but don't necessarily want to know, and you don't have to spread them out over your whole Pokemon team. But then again, it has an impact on your Pokemon team because then you can only have 5 actual Pokemon that you want to use, and then 1 guy who just helps you get around like a weird taxi animal service. To me, I think it's as simple as either making the HM moves more desirable, like Surf, or at the very least making them more flexible, like making them moves that actually contribute to your team in some way. Like if you can teach Cut as a grass move to a Pokemon, then it can learn a grass move that might help you beat a gym leader or something. Perhaps I'm griping too much, but this is my pet peeves, so there are going to be things that just bother me, and not necessarily things that need to be changed, but things that I would like to see changed. And finally, pet peeve number 1. Caves. Seriously, does anybody like caves? Were caves ever a good idea? Do you remember in the old games when you had to use flash to navigate a cave because it was literally too dark to see anything otherwise? Remember how they've continued to use flash sporadically throughout the series, even though it's a really stupid, useless, and annoying move? Why would I want any of that? Caves are absolutely the most frustrating part about playing through the story of the game. I mean, half the reason that Fly is such a useful move outside of battle is that you get to circumvent caves. No one ever wants to go back into a cave. Be honest with me. How many times playing through a Pokemon game for the first time have you wandered into a cave and found yourself just like going back and forth, looking for the rock to push out of the way, or trying to figure out which ladder actually leads somewhere instead of just to like a Carbos or something? It's like a million times, right? You get lost like a million times? I know I got lost like a million times. Look, I understand that bats live in caves, but I could go the rest of my life without ever seeing another Golbat and be totally okay with it. Okay? It could simply be another case where I just want there to be more variety to the exploration, but I think it's more than that in this case. The caves themselves are just frustrating to me. They're difficult to navigate. There's often those like ledges you can't go back up, and then you have to like circle through the cave on multiple floors. Oh, why are there so many caves with multiple floors? Almost without fail, caves are the worst part of every Pokemon game, at least from my experience. Even in the early games when you're trying to like catch Articuno, you have to like navigate the cave until your eyes just melts from boredom. I don't know how that can happen, but if it does, you should probably go to a Pokemon Center, cause that healthcare is free, yo. I find myself struggling to get my point across on this one, but hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from. I just find the caves to be too long, too difficult to navigate, and they're just not ever interesting or fun. It's just always like, great, now I get to slog through the cave section of the game. Hope this is the last cave, but it never is. And perhaps we could be spared from so much cave exploration if we could, again, increase the variety of the HM moves and what they do. I mean, Rock Climb was kind of a weird move, but it was one of my more favorite HM moves. I would occasionally have a Pokemon who'd be interested in learning it, plus climbing up rocks to get places was more interesting than going through a cave and pushing a boulder in a hole for who knows why. Okay, you guys, I think that's all I have time for today, so I hope you enjoyed my Poke-Pet Peeves, and if you did, you should like this video, because it means that you like me. You like me, don't you? You like me, don't you? Whoa, dude, chill out. Don't know what's up with him today. But thank you for watching. Tune in next time for more stuff about stuff. But if you have a specific stuff that you want me to stuff about, then you should stuff it in the comments. Wait, that sounds weird. Leave a comment telling me what to talk about. Cool? Cool. See you next time. I don't understand. Do we need to go to counseling? Did I say something? You're being super passive-aggressive. Why don't you just tell me what's wrong?